The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the NFC South again, but unfortunately lost in the wild card round to the Washington Commanders. Now they go into the 2025 offseason wondering how they can repeat again and make it an even deeper run in the 2025 playoffs. My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we're going to break down what you can expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to do this offseason. But before we do that, if you like the work that Ryan and I put out and you want to help the Tracy Tate channel grow, the easiest way is by hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell to get notified when new videos come out. But while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Buccaneers do this offseason. And Ryan, once again, my Atlanta Falcons had the NFC South division in their hands, and then they handed it over to Tampa Bay Buccaneers twice, actually, I will say.
Yeah.
The first half of the season, where I think we were like 93% chance to win the division. And then after the Buccaneers lost to the Cowboys somehow, then we lost to the Washington Commanders, who are now in the NFC Championship. So maybe it's not as bad of a loss, but still, it's still not fun to say. That being said, though, Tampa Bay Buccaneers really only had one clear weakness, and it wasn't even fair, I think, just because injuries happened. But like secondary for Tampa Bay needs to be improved. I think that's going to be their primary focus. But in general, though, I mean, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team looked really good. Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield had an amazing season. Bucky Irving, you can make an argument, was one of the steals of the draft. I don't think they took Bucky Irving until day 3. I go back and double check. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll do that here in a second.
Mhm. No,
But
he was a day 3 pick.
it was day 3 pick. I think round
Yeah.
5. Am I amazing? I think I am. Round 4. Darn it. I missed a little bit. But still, you could say one of the steals of the draft. He had an absolutely amazing season as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rushing offense just exploded.
Oh, yeah.
Addition to Graham Barton and the first round pick, they just played extremely well, averaging nearly 400 yards of total offense. And Baker Mayfield leading the way. I will say I was facetiously saying I hate Baker Mayfield. I hate going up against him. That being said, as a fan, how can you not root for the guy? Like when you see him bulldozing these linebackers and
Oh,
just
yeah.
running over these teams, he is super fun to watch. I'm glad he found a place. Well, I'm not glad it's Tampa. I wish he stayed in Cleveland. I bet people in Cleveland wish he stayed there also.
Oh, yeah.
But the one downfall I think for the Tampa Bay team was I just think they were just decimated with injuries in the secondary, and I think that's
Yeah.
going to be a big point of focus for them this offseason.
Yeah, I think going into it, that's like the glaring point where you look and it's like, okay, maybe they had a little too many turnovers. You're going to get that. Baker is a little bit of a gunslinger, so there's a give and take there. But other than that, like 29th in passing is bad. And so they definitely need some new players, I think, on the back end of that defense. The other thing, so like I think specifically the cornerback spot is going to be really important. The other thing, like their safeties always have been so banged up. Mike Edwards, Antoine Winfield Jr., like they've just done they've had so many injuries and they're good players. They just can't stay on the field consistently. So be interesting to kind of see what happens there in that room. The other thing too, they were 6th in sacks. And so like, I'm not trying to like say that they like need to improve their pass rush, but this is a really deep edge class. If you could get Yaya Diaby, another like running mate at edge rusher, ooh, man, that is going to be a scary front 7 where they could apply a lot of pressure on quarterbacks pretty, like I say pretty consistently, but like they're going to be facing quarterbacks having to have like the quickest time to throw that week, just because these edge rushers are going to get there in less than 3 seconds. So
Well, and even too on top of that, Kalijah Kancey, he had 7.5 sacks. Vita Vea,
yeah,
he had 7 sacks, and Kalijah Kancey actually only played in 12 games.
yeah,
So, you got guys like Lavonte David who had 5.5 sacks. So I agree. It's like getting Yaya Diaby a running mate, but it was a pretty widespread,
yeah,
guys that got sacks. I think to me, I think like Vita Vea being like in the middle there. To your point, if you could go get another guy, like a guy that could be a double-digit sack producer, Vita Vea brings up so much attention already to the
yeah,
offensive lines because he's just so freaking big.
yeah,
That it's going to open up more avenues, I think, for the teams. Maybe drop one guy back in coverage. So, to your point though, it's going to be interesting here if they want to go and address the defensive line, get an edge rusher. They're kind of in that unique spot to where some of the top edge rushers are going to be off the board. But to your point, this is such a deep class.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it a little bit deeper here in a second, but let's move on to the next slide, though. Who are going to be some of the guys that are hitting the free agency market? There's a lot of guys here, so we won't go through all of them. But Ben Bredesen, Lavonte David, KJ Britt, Chris Godwin, that's a guy we'll talk about here in a second. Joe Tyron Shoyinka, I think I got that correctly. He's probably going to be gone. I know is PFF. So say I think he's one of the lower graded edge rushers when it comes to PFF. I know that's not the God send all, but to your point, just with how deep this class is, I think that they can improve at the edge rusher position with an upgrade over him there. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of other guys though here, it's going to be very curious on what they end up doing. They are, as of right now, it looks like they're about at the cap. They're about 2 million, 3 million under, according to over the cap. But there are contract extensions that they can do. There's guys that they can bring in. I'm sure they can move some money around to get that well up to like 20, 30 million, so to say.
Yeah.
The big name for me here, and I've seen this on some other comments within the Bucs Nation on videos that we've had throughout the season, and we appreciate any and all reaction. But I do think Chris Godwin will not be back with Tampa Bay next year. I think Jalen McMillan, I think fits that, like, will replace his role perfectly. He's a lot cheaper. Chris Godwin at court, like, was getting paid. How much was he getting paid here?
18,
something like that. Let me go and double check here. 20 million ish. That's the projected contract that I'm seeing as of right now, and I think he totally deserves it. I just think if you're Tampa Bay, you have Jalen McMillan here. Mike Evans is still playing at an elite level with his 11th straight 1,000-yard receiving season as well. I think you can maybe move on from him and to take that money elsewhere. We had the same type of discussion on the Cincinnati Bengals video about T. Higgins. If they re-sign Chris Godwin, I would totally get it. So I'm not saying that he's not worth the money. But what I'm saying, though, is like I'm curious with just what their cost-benefit analysis, like if they give him $20 million again, can that $20 million go and help out the defense, and in what way? Could they go bring in some good secondary guy like DJ Reed, for example, who's a free agent out of the New York Jets? So that's why I think they might look at it and be like, Jalen McMillan has stepped up into that role. He had a really good rookie season as well. I think he can take that next role, like away from Chris Godwin here. And when he's coming off a pretty serious ankle injury like that, and he's had an ACL injury, which when he came back from the ACL injury, there definitely was a ramp up period. He wasn't that same receiver just yet. Now this year, unfortunately, he got back to being that guy during the 6 games he played in, 7 games he played in. He had where's his receiving yards here? He had nearly 600 yards in the 7 games that he played in. Like he would have been a 1,000-yard receiver as well. So it's I get why they'd want to bring back that Mike Evans, Chris Godwin tandem, but it's going to be evaluating how serious that ankle injury is, and will Jalen McMillan be the guy that can replace it?
Yeah, and to me, the way I look at it is, how can we use the assets that we have this offseason? So that's cap space, draft picks, players on our current roster that are signed to play in 2025. How can we use that to put the best team out on the field that we can? And to me, the best use of that money is to go and get a linebacker, a cornerback, a safety, an edge rusher in this free agency class, in this draft class, and use your resources towards that, because you have been lucky I say lucky, you have done a good job of replenishing this team with a lot of young talent and a lot of young playmakers that can come in and kind of replace a guy like Chris Godwin, who's I say aging, he's only 28, but still 28 in this league going into your 3rd contract. I think that's going to be the kind of a sticking point there, especially coming off a broken ankle, where that's going to be a little bit tough. And just like, so some of the guys I think that they could add to this team, go get a Justin Reed, DJ Reed from New York that you already mentioned. Go get a Josh Uche from Kansas City, very fast edge rusher, not going to provide a lot in the run game. Bobby Wagner, be that veteran presence there in that middle linebacker room. Lavonte David, you could re-sign him as well. And in the draft too, if you want to identify 3 key positions, you sign 2 or 3, or sign 1 or 2 of them in free agency. go and then make that a priority at the top. So if you get an edge rusher in free agency, go after Malachi Starks. If you get Justin Reed in free agency, go after Michael Williams or one of the like plentiful edge rushers that are in this very deep edge rushing class. So it's going to be a really interesting free agency offseason period for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, because they really were, I think, a couple pieces away from competing, especially if they're just healthy at the end of the year. I think that game with Washington is really close, and now we've kind of seen what happens as the season continued or as the postseason continued for Washington.
Well, yeah, and I think what's interesting too about Tampa Bay is they're in a unique period. Like they won the Super Bowl, but they gave away a lot of assets, and then they still ended up actually winning the division. And
Yeah.
now you kind of go look at their core, their offensive line's younger. You know, they got Cody Monk and they got Graham Barton. Tristan Wirfs are maybe one of the best left tackles in the league. So the offensive line is established. Defensive line is improving a lot. With Vita in there, it's going to be great. But they've drafted well with Yaya Diaby, and they've had other good guys in there, like with Clyde Cansey, who led the team in sacks. If they can go and improve the secondary, and then with the young core that they have here, what's frustrating with me as a Falcons fan is like the Buccaneers, I think, could potentially still keep winning the division, because Baker Mayfield's not slowing down anytime soon. I think Baker Mayfield's only 30, if that even.
If that, yeah.
He's 29, so he'll be 30 at some point between the making of this video and next year's video. So he's well within the prime of his career. Mike Evans is still playing at an elite level. He would have easily made 1,000 yards if he didn't have the hamstring issues.
Oh, 100%.
So if they want to keep Cade Otton, or they want to improve the tight end position, I could see them going that route also with one of their picks. They're in a very unique spot here, I think, to be very competitive in a division that is still pretty weak. The Saints, I think, are going to be a wash next year. I wonder if they're going to finally kick the can down the road. Well, they're going to kick the can down the road at minimum, or if not, maybe finally blow it up. Falcons, maybe we found something to Michael Penix, but at the same time, though, too, there's still holes in our rebuild that I don't know if it's going to make us a perfect team yet. Carolina, I think, is in a similar boat with Atlanta, where it's like, okay, we started to make some good strides, but there's still clear vulnerabilities on this team.
Yeah.
If Tampa Bay could come out with a little bit of a hotter start, they could be pretty lethal team, I think, going into the season, because the two seasons in a row now, Tampa Bay has played very well in the second half of the season, snatched the division out of the Falcons' hands, and we were holding onto that division extremely loosely, so it wasn't that difficult. But if they went on they were 2-0 to start the season, and then they won two of their next 8 games. So they were 4-6 going into their bye, and then their only loss was to Dallas. And so they went 6-1 the rest of the way. If they could start off better, get a little bit more in rhythm here, I think they could be a team that could be 13-4 and potentially be in the number 1 or number 2 seed going into the playoffs here, just with how young their core is. Bucky Irving, I think, is going to establish, and then offensive line is going to stay established as well. So that running game is going to be there. Mike Evans is future Hall of Famer, and so Baker Mayfield, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league as well. This team could be really good again next year, which is frustrating to me, but who knows?
Well, Bucs fans, I'm pretty sure will not be frustrated with it. So
I understand.
All in all, I think the Bucs, even coming from a Falcons fan, seems to have a pretty positive outlook in the years going forward. So maybe that's like a reverse jinx. Who knows? But all in all, I think it's looking good for the Bucs going forward. Let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you want to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do this offseason. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.